Iguodala to Curry, back to Iguodala, up for the layup. Oh, blocked by James. It's over. It's over. Cleveland is a city of champions once again. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.
That sound means it's time for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast, part of the Press Play Podcast Network. I am your host, Chase Smith, and with me in this special mid-November season recap episode, Cavs superfan, Cleveland radio call-in legend, everyone's favorite follow on Twitter, Hiram Boyd. Hiram, welcome to the break, man.
What's going on, Chase?
Super glad you could join us. Hey, a lot has happened since we recorded an episode, Sam and I, on the way home from the Nets game. This is what's happened in a span of like 3 weeks, and we haven't dropped an episode at all. Ty Lue got fired. The Cavs won their lone win in the season at home against the Hawks. KLove was sidelined with the foot injury. That was actually like the day after that Nets game, which was really weird. The players are disgruntled. JR's voiced to be traded. Korver's been on the trade block, rumored been the trade block for weeks. Sexton started his first game, the development of Sexton. The Cavs had a couple close games to no avail. Hiram, what is going on at the Q?
Hey, man, they're trying to weather the storm of injuries. They're trying to be incorporated by a new head coach, a better head coach, and they're trying to develop at the same time. So all of this stuff is to be expected, and you got a couple of veterans who may or may not be disgruntled, but no longer fit in the team's plan. So changes need to be made.
So let's talk about the firing of Ty Lue. Some say it was long overdue. Some say they should have given him a little more chance in the rebuild. But Hiram, we were talking before the show. You maybe don't think Ty Lue wanted to be here at all. You want to expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, I don't think he wanted to be here. I don't think he was part of he wanted to be part of a quasi rebuild. His coaching style of, needing and wanting to play veterans and stuff like that, and things so forth like that, just didn't fit with this new reality of a quasi rebuild with a couple of veterans and building around those veterans and developing young players at the same time. That's not Lue's style. Also, I feel like he didn't have a system in place in 2.5 years on offense and defense. I mean, what is the Cleveland Cavaliers? What do they do? I mean, what kind of system do they run? And no one can tell me that. No one can tell me anything of what they did.
Yeah,
on the Cavaliers.
The system they run is mid-range jumpers and bad defense. That was the system they ran.
Right. And then listen, when Kobe Altman fired Tyronn Lue, listening to the press conference, I got the feeling that he wanted to do it in the offseason, but he said it wouldn't have been fair to Lue. Mm-hmm. But it was clear to everybody watching that when Lue took off sick that time for those 10 games, that the team was responding better to Larry Drew. And I think it goes back to that time when that opened the eyes of the front office and ownership of Larry Drew is a better coach. And from what we've seen this year and how he's turned the Cavs around, even despite the injuries, they are more competitive. Even though they haven't won, they are more competitive. And you can see the things that he's trying to do and incorporating young, and it makes a lot more sense. And he's just simply a better coach than Tyronn Lue.
Yep. At the beginning of the season, Hiram, Vegas had the over-under for the Cavs at 30.5 wins. And right now, November 13th, we're 1-11. So I don't think anyone saw the Cavs being this bad. There were even talks about the Cavs getting the 8 seed, and there's no way in hell that's happening right now.
Right.
So I think this the kind of shift happened after we lost to that Hawks team the very first time at home. I think that's when people realized, oh, okay, this isn't going to be well. And honestly, at that Nets game we were at, I think that really opened the eyes to at least some of the players. I think that's when they realized, okay, we're in full-on tank mode right now. They shut down Kevin Love. He didn't hobble around. I mean, I was there for the whole game and even in the locker room. I never got a sense that he was injured. I mean, he didn't play that much that night, so maybe he tweaked it and he just didn't show it. But I really think when we lost to the Hawks the first time at home and then that Nets game, that kind of, okay, we're in full-out tank mode. We're in the driver's seat to draft one of these studs coming out of Duke. And then you start looking at this kind of nucleus that we have, and it starts to get a little exciting. But I think you might be onto something, Hiram. I don't think Lue, wanted to be part of a rebuild. I think Lue was a LeBron coach, and so
Right.
I don't think he's a player's coach. I think the players like playing for a former player, but I think he and LeBron had a connection, and
Yes.
I think he took a lot of coaching insight from LeBron. But dude, you're right, man. They responded well to Larry Drew when he coached last season. The defense improved, ball movement improved.
Yes.
And
Improving now too.
yep, and they're getting better and better, and the team is looking better and better. Hiram, Kevin Love's.
Can I just say this real quick?
Please.
It's one thing if I can may take a Browns analogy. It's one thing to lose, okay, but they were getting blown out every single game. And now with Larry Drew, they're losing. Like the Browns lost last year, a lot of close games. They're losing, but you can see that, they're competitive, they're developing, so forth and so on. With Tyronn Lue, they were getting blown out. They got blown out at home by the Hawks.
Yeah.
And the only thing you can do is tell me that I play J.R. Smith. Come on, man.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Kevin Love's essentially shut down. JR wants to be traded. Corver rumored on the block. Hiram, the Cavs are obviously going to be sellers between now and February. What players do you realistically see being moved from the Cavs team right now?
I think JR is probably going to be either traded or bought out. I think Hill could be. I think Hill's a nice piece for a team. They're not willing to pay that salary. You're going to have to take back a couple of bad ball players. But I think a team in need that needs a backup or a solid point guard would take Hill. And I was reading on a Sixers site last night, in the afternoon, that they were saying that the trade for Kyle Korver is close. And I got on Twitter and I said that, I asked that question. And they were saying that the deal, Scalabrine, remember Brian Scalabrine? He was saying that the trade for Kyle Korver is very close to being done.
That would make sense. That would make sense. Korver to the Sixers. That's what I've heard. Yep.
Right, and it makes sense because as soon as I saw that Kyle Korver was out, 2 games because of his foot injury or whatever.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty close. However, I get into a debate with people all the time. I would not. I shouldn't say I would not. I would be hesitant to trade Kevin Love. I would. Because I know the desire of this team is not a full scale rebuild. And think about this, Chase. You have Kevin Love, who on a championship team is a 3. Then you get one of these studs out of Duke. Any one of them. Give me, I don't care which one. Any, mini, mine, I don't care. Give me one of those studs. And it's no question in my mind, one of these other guys currently on the team is going to be a stud, if not 2 or 3 of them, in my opinion. I personally believe Ante Zizic, once you get that guy 30 minutes, I already think he's better than Nurkic as it is. Dude, I personally do.
You are driving that train, I think, all by yourself at this point, Hiram. You're the only one I see who's out there stunting for Zizic.
Oh, my God. No, I'm not the only one. I talked to some guys on Twitter, but nobody is as vocal as I am.
Right.
But I think that guy is an absolute – I mean, just thinking the other game, a couple games ago, he had 16 minutes, and he had basically a double-double.
Yeah.
I mean, and remember Larry Drew said, look, this guy, every time I put him in there, he plays well. He about to start.
Yeah.
I mean, for a veteran coach to come out and say that in 10 games tells me something. I think Colin Sexton is going to be a floor Schroeder up in Oklahoma City now. And I think Chetty Osman, once he gets his 3-point shooting together and his form is fine, will be a very 15 to 18 point guy who can give you multiple things, 6 rebounds, 3 or 4 assists, 1 or 2 steals, somebody like that. Yeah. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of great young pieces currently on the Cavs. I would be hesitant to trade Kevin Love, one, because I think the veteran presence he brings.
Yes.
And especially to help a young player like a Nance or a Zizic. Was it Zizic or Zivic? I don't even know. That guy, I think just having that, I mean, he and Tristan are the only guy. I mean, you got JR and Korver, but if JR gets traded and Korver does go to the Sixers, those are going to be the only 2 guys left from the old guard. And you need some veteran presence.
Yes.
That knows the culture. that the arena can kind of feel like home to. So, I mean, that would be an interesting move. I'm not sure what they're going to do. I know the Corver to the Sixers makes a lot of sense. They traded Covington and Saric, which I think I saw a stat that was like most of Ben Simmons' assists went to them on the perimeter. And with them gone, they didn't really have, aside from J.J. Redick, like a strong three-point presence because this is going to clog the lane with Embiid and Butler and Simmons. They're just going to clog the lane. So the Sixers need some three-point help. Corver makes sense coming off the bench. And so I think you're right on that too, man. I think JR will be bought out. I think Corver is going to be moved very soon. And I think Hill's an interesting piece. I can see maybe someone like the Rockets maybe kind of trade him for a backup point guard like that, kind of like a second unit. And so I do think the Cavs are going to be high sellers. I think the Cavs are in for a long season. Hiram, would you put will the Cavs win more than 15 games this season?
Yes, but not much more than that.
Okay.
However, I'll say this too. I mean, you may or may not get to it a little bit later, but I think the Cavs made one big blunder, and I'm not pounding. I said it on Twitter a million times. I think they made a tremendous blunder this offseason. I don't know how you get Larry Nance that money. I don't, Chase.
You're not a Larry Nance fan?
I mean, it's apparent to me that you got three centers on this team.
Yeah.
And he's the third best. And you gave him $10 million. I mean, is he better than Tristan Thompson? Absolutely not. Is he better than Ante Zizic? As far as anything is concerned.
As far as Hiram's concerned, he's not.
I'm gonna ask you this. He plays the pick and roll. He plays pick and roll good. He's an energy guy. I mean, he's your third best. He's your third best big man.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, and I think here's the argument for that. I think Nance plays above the rim. I think he brings a certain defensive intensity that Zizic does not bring. And I think his ceiling, it might be a little higher than at least power forward center hybrid might be a little higher than Zizic's as well. I just think he's a different player, and I think he flies around the court. Sometimes he gets out of position because he's trying to do too much. I think the plan would be to have him develop. I think super young piece. I didn't mind. I think, honestly, was it 4 years, $10 million? Is that kind of what it was?
I think he got $10 million per. It averages out $10 million per.
Okay. I mean, that's not that bad.
Right.
I mean, if you think about it, you saw Ryan Anderson's contract. I mean, that's horrendous.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I think it can be relative, but I would have loved to see more development at this point from him. I think he could have gotten more minutes in the playoffs last year. I don't know why they were hesitant to put him in, even if it's just some like in the earlier rounds or the Raptors series, just something to get.
He was awful. He was awful in the Boston series. They had to take him. You remember, and here's the turning point for me. They kept posting him up. Horford was about to score 100 points on him.
Yeah.
I mean, he has terrible low post defense. His rebounding is up and down like a yo-yo. He can't hit an outside shot. He plays above the rim, but he's somebody. And $10 million per, I guess, isn't. People tell me it's not too bad. I would have rather. This is just Hiram speaking.
Yeah.
I would have rather say, you know what, Tristan, I'm gonna give you 2 more years, man, on your deal. I think Tristan is so underrated, man. That guy. I know he had a rough. And word is that he was injured last year, and injured a lot more than what people were saying. That he was out of shape, messing around with that, his wife or whatever that is. He had a bad year, but this year, man, I'd rather get him money to him, man. Here, look, I'm gonna tack on. You 28 years old come December 26th. I'm gonna give you 2 or 3 more years on your deal, man, because you keep playing like this, man. I don't want to see you go anywhere. That's what I would have done.
Just kind of wrap up this Nance discussion. He is not really offensive minded. Neither is Tristan. So I think Zizic might be the best offensive center that we have. But I just think they're all different, and it's just like a quarterback. If you have 3 different quarterbacks, guess what that means? you don't have a quarterback, right?
Well, yes, in the NFL, but I think it's clear to me at least. And I don't think we can say what Zizic is because he has yet to get about 35 minutes a game.
Yeah,
I'm
he's
convinced.
super young. He's super young too. You're right.
I'm convinced, looking at his skill set and watching basketball for over 30 years, looking at his skill set, he is, in my opinion, you gave this guy 35 minutes a game, there's no question in my mind he would average well over a double-double. He would average a double-double a game. I'm talking about, I think he's already better than Nurkic out in Portland.
Yeah.
In Portland. I think he would challenge Jokic, in my opinion. Different skill set now, but I think he would challenge Jokic because I don't think it's, I mean, some of the things, going back and I watched the games that he had last year and this year, that skill set, there's no question in my mind. If he got 35 minutes a game, he would be a 19, 20-point guy, 11 rebounds, 1 or 2 assists, 1 or 2 blocks, so forth. There's no question in my mind that would be the case.
The Joker is, I think, currently the third best center in the league behind Brow and Embiid. And so I don't know, man. That would be a huge bump, especially to the young core we have. And let's transition and talk about the young players the Cavs have. You look at this young core, Colin Sexton, Cedi Osman, Ante Zizic. Those are 3 potential starting pieces of something really, really special. Players that are solid all around. Of those 3, I think we all know you love Zizic. Do you like Sexton or do you like Cedi Osman better, Hiram?
I don't want to look at it and say better. I think that's a tough one, man. I've been impressed with these past 2 games. I've been impressed with Colin Sexton. He looks way more comfortable, and not enough is being said about players coming off of the bench and how big of an adjustment that is, especially for a young player. He looks so much more comfortable as a starter. If you had to put a gun to my head, and I love both, I would probably choose Sexton. But I'm a huge Cedi Osman fan. And I think the reason I'm a big fan of his is I think his jump shot is fine. It's just not going down. His form is fine. He's showing signs. I think he's going to be one of those guys that just flat out fills up the stat sheet.
Yeah. You know,
and
I kind of felt the same way about Sexton. Whenever I was interviewing the players in the locker room, I asked Kevin Love, I said, Kevin, because Kevin played with Russell Westbrook in UCLA, and I watch Russ play, and I kind of see shades of Russ's game and Sexton's game. You know, hustle, hard worker, not the most consistent jump shot, but you know they're just willing the ball to go in. Like they're super hard players, and I kind of see a little. You know, I've watched ball my whole life, played ball my whole life. I love basketball, so it's not like I have a sore eye or I don't know what I'm talking about here. And so I said, Kevin, you play with Russell at UCLA. Do you see any shades of his game in Sexton's game? And Kevin, I'm never going to forget the look he gave me. He gave me this death stare, and he said, no, they're different players. And that was it. And so I was blown away that Kevin didn't see any resemblance in the 2 players at all. And so that's really made me kind of rethink Colin Sexton. And so I don't know what happens at practice. I don't know how he carries himself. I don't know how much film he watches or doesn't. You know, I don't know any of that. And so I felt like that was a really loaded answer. And I'm not trying to speak against Colin Sexton because he was super kind and really respectful in the locker room. I mean, he looked at me and talked right in the eyes. It was a really great you know, I love the kid. I'm glad he's on the Cavs. But it's really kind of made me pause on my, like, let's crown Colin the next Cleveland great Cavs player. Just kind of wait a second. If we have someone like Kevin Love, he's like, no, they're different players. Like, what's really going on with Colin Sexton?
Well, here's the thing. With Colin Sexton, he's been getting a lot of grief. I watched the Chicago game like 2 or 3 times, 2.5 times. Okay, he's been getting a lot of grief about his assists. And when I went, Rick Nolan got on Twitter. Is like, well, can he average more than 3 assists a game? And I went back and watched the game. I said, if guys convert, and watching the game, if guys convert, he would have had about 8 or 9, maybe even 10 assists. You got to factor in guys converting on when you talking about assists. Guys have to do their job too. Now, here's the thing that you got to remember with Kevin Love. Kevin Love is one of those guys who's very measured in what he says. And you're not the only one who has said that about Sexton. There's at least 2 other people nationally that have said maybe they see some Russell Westbrook. Kevin Love was probably saying, look, I see what you're saying, but I don't want to come out and say and put that kind of pressure on that guy.
Yeah.
Because he's only 18, 19. And we're at the stage where we don't need, you know how Cleveland fans are, you know, they have all these exorbitant expectations, and if you don't fill them, you're a bust and get rid of you, and so forth and so on. So,
right, but I was trying to give him a chance to like encourage the young guy who is struggling at the start of the season to like say, hey, this team believes in me, and not to add pressure, but at some point you got to feel like the team believes in you and they're excited about you.
Right.
So I don't know.
But if you can't get excited about what you've seen out of Colin Sexton these past 2 games, then I don't know what you're watching. Because in my opinion, I was talking to my buddy Real Mike Young about it, and he says that he's going to be Dennis Schrader up in Schroeder, and I see some of that. I think his jump shot is going to be good enough. I see some of that, but I also see a little bit more explosiveness than and Schroeder is a good ball player. He's 18, 19 points a game, probably win 6 man of the year, maybe. I see he probably has a little bit more upside than Schroeder, because what I notice about him is he's an excellent on-ball defender. He's terrible. He has no idea how to play the pick-and-roll defense or switch or anything like that. He has no clue on how to do any of that stuff.
Yeah. Well, Hiram, I really appreciate your time this morning. This does it for Cavs on the Break NBA podcast. Thank you so much for downloading and listening. Make sure to give us a follow on Twitter. We always follow back. Hit that subscribe button wherever you're listening to this. Hiram, any final thoughts this morning?
I would say this. My boy, I was reading online looking at Ante Zizic, and word is that some of the broadcasters, I was watching them, and one of the opposing broadcasters was like, watch out for this guy. This guy can ball. He can ball. So if the Cavs don't want him, there's a group out there that will take him. So I would advise, that's the only thing I'm disappointed with Drew about. You got to play this guy 30, 35 minutes a game. Other than that, I have no issue. So, and I appreciate you letting me on.
Dude, yeah, man. If Zizic ever needs a place to crash, your couch is available, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
All right, well, that does it. Mike Breen, take us out.
Congratulations, Cleveland. Your decades-long wait is finally over. The Cavaliers are NBA champions.